Thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and are you watching Lego Monkie Kid? Because if you're not, drop what you're doing and start the show right now. Lego Monkie Kid has somehow become one of the best Lego TV shows, and yet I honestly don't see a lot of people talking about it, which is why I wanted to put out this video before Season 5 comes out in English to be able to talk through what I think of the show as a whole. So what is Lego Monkie Kid? Monkie Kid is a somewhat retelling of the Journey to the West, a Chinese folklore, but reimagining it in the modern world, and having it be a direct sequel to the original stories. All of the stories are treated as canon to the world, but they're just expounding on the legends. Monkie Kid is a super interesting show for Lego to produce. It is intended mostly for Chinese audiences, but has gotten kind of a cult following, at least here in the US and even in some parts of Europe. The animation style is beautiful. The characters are really well acted and animated. Who knew the voice actors were actually part of some of the voice acting cast of even Avatar: The Last Airbender and shows like that? But overall, it's a really great show. I can't wait to explain why, so let's jump into it right now. So let's dive in to Lego Monkie Kid. Lego Monkie Kid is, in my opinion, one of the most underappreciated and maybe underrated Lego shows and themes. And this is not entirely the audience's fault. To provide some context, Monkie Kid was initially only designed to be sold in Chinese and Asian audiences and marketplaces. Essentially, they developed the theme for Chinese audiences. They were only going to sell it in Asia until there was a whole debacle where shortly before Monkie Kid's launch, earlier in the year, Lego launched some really fantastic Lunar New Year celebration sets. But they made them exclusive to Asia, and there was so much fan outcry about these sets only being found in Asia that Lego had to backpedal significantly, saying, "Oh, never mind, sorry, we're never gonna do that again," and literally promised to never have any regional exclusives ever again. Because of this, Monkie Kid found itself in a bit of a weird spot. They developed the TV show, they developed the sets, but really were only going to release them in Asia in May, but they then had to scramble to figure out a best way to release them in the US, in Europe, and other parts of the world other than Asia. In the US at least, they came upon a deal with Amazon, where the sets would be sold exclusively through Amazon and through Lego.com and Lego stores, and no other retailer could stock them. So that meant Target, Walmart, even Toys R Us, if your country still had them, couldn't stock Monkie Kid sets. The only way to get them was from Amazon or through Lego.com. The other thing with the distribution of the show, given that this decision was so late, Lego was left with not a ton of distribution channels for the TV show. They could maybe post it on YouTube, but they figured, you know what, let's actually make sure that people are paying to watch this show we have spent so much money and effort on, so let's put it up on Amazon Video and have people purchase it on Amazon. And so, Lego Monkie Kid launched in America and it launched in Europe, where you could see some of the sets in store shelves. You could also see some of the sets online on Amazon.com, and you could watch the first 2 episodes of the show online as well through Amazon by purchasing them. But there wasn't really a huge amount of fanfare surrounding this launch. There wasn't a big press push. There wasn't a ton of advertising in Lego stores. The sets kind of just appeared. And because of that, people in the US especially, and even in Europe, didn't really know what Monkie Kid was. It wasn't like Lego's other releases, especially their other original themes, where something like Ninjago, Nexo Knights, Chima, even Lego Elves would get a huge marketing and media push. They made sure that you knew how you could watch the show, and they also made sure that you knew what the theme was and what the sets were. It would have advertising in magazines, in comics, in mail adverts. Monkie Kid got basically none of that because it never was intended to be even released outside of Asia. And while I'm very glad that they did choose to release it outside of Asia, it became very obvious over the years of Monkie Kid's run where Lego's priorities really lay when it came to promoting Lego Monkie Kid. Eventually coming to the point where they just stopped selling these sets in stores entirely. In America and in Europe, you cannot find physical Lego Monkie Kid sets in stores. The only way to actually get the sets is to actually seek them out on Lego.com. You have to purchase them online to be able to get the sets, and this has a few problems associated with it. First of all, a lot of the ways that younger kids discover Lego products and discover new Lego themes is by running into them. Often not even at LEGO stores. LEGO stores are obviously many in number, but there are some states here in the US and some countries in Europe that just don't really have any. Or if they do, maybe there's one, and it could be hours away from where you live. But that's what other retailers are for. Kids can discover LEGO sets in a Target or in a Walmart here in the US. There's a Target and Walmart in almost every city, and there's pretty much guaranteed to be one around you. But by preventing retailers from having LEGO Monkie Kid sets because they didn't really work out the deals with retailers to sell it there, and only now selling it online, kids can't really discover Monkie Kid. They have to actively seek it out and be searching for it. And it's hard to make kids excited about a product they've never heard of and look for a product they've never heard of if there's no way for them to hear about it. And unfortunately, because of this, LEGO Monkie Kid, at least in the States and in Europe, has been trapped in this pretty unfortunate cycle of products coming out and not a ton of attention being paid to those products, especially when it comes to younger fans whose attention they're trying to capture. In Asia, I hear Monkie Kid is doing phenomenally well, and that's probably because they actually market Monkie Kid to a significant degree in Asia. I even visited Korea and Japan recently and was surprised at just how much Monkie Kid stuff there was being showcased. It wasn't even in China, and I can only imagine just how much more there is in China. China has in-person LEGO Monkie Kid events. There is a Monkie Kid world being built in Legoland in China specific for the Asian market. There are pop-up driving vans that go around the country advertising Monkie Kid. There are all sorts of shows and events and expos themed around Monkie Kid, and because of that, it is wildly successful there. But it only is wildly successful there because LEGO is actually trying to market it there. Obviously, going back a bit, LEGO Monkie Kid is an original LEGO theme that is a bit unique when it comes to other original LEGO themes, in that it's actually based off of real-world mythology. That case being the Journey to the West, a legendary and very popular ancient Chinese folklore surrounding Sun Wukong, aka the Monkey King. The Monkey King goes on adventures with his companions and learns a few life lessons and morals along the way, and it's typically a series of legends taught to younger kids growing up in Asia for them to learn basically basic morals and values to shape their lives. This is a story that has been around for literally centuries. Monkey King and his legend of Sun Wukong has been a piece of mythology that is almost as legendary as like Greek mythology or the Roman gods or something that you would think of in that sort of vein. It is truly a legend that has been cemented for years and years and years. What LEGO has done is they've taken this original legend of Sun Wukong and they've basically said, you know what, all of that, everything that happened there, that's now canon to our LEGO show. Our LEGO show, though, is going to be about something a little different. It's about the next generation, and it's about Monkey King training a protege, the Monkey Kid, and him collecting his own band of adventurers and friends and companions, and going on these journeys to defeat villains who were once long thought defeated, which is why most of the villains in Monkey Kid are previous villains that Sun Wukong faced, eventually defeated at some point in the past in accordance with the legends, but have found some way to claw their way back to reality and now are posing a threat to today's world. It's a really interesting juxtaposition of technology and the modern world alongside old legends, and it's unlike anything LEGO has really ever done before. There is a fantastic documentary available online about how LEGO created Monkey Kid. I think it's called Journey to the East, and it basically is talking about LEGO visiting China and trying to come up with a homegrown IP theme by going around and understanding more about Chinese lore and mythology. It's a really, really interesting piece of LEGO media. It is probably the deepest dive I've ever watched into creating an actual LEGO theme. It really does everything. It goes into set designer interviews. It interviews the person writing the TV show, the directors, the voice actors. It goes into the prototyping of the sets, how they formed this theme based around the legends. It is genuinely one of my favorite pieces of LEGO media out there, and I would highly recommend you go check it out. If you Google it, I'll try to link it in the description below as well. And if I forget, folks, do remind me in the comments. I think it's free on like Dailymotion, so anybody can watch it, but it's super cool, and it just shows how much effort LEGO put into it by making it a unique theme, by making Monkey Kid a theme that for the first time was specifically designed with one audience in mind. But how does that all relate to the Monkey Kid TV show, which is really what I wanted to talk about for today's video? Well, the Monkey Kid show is probably one of the best pieces of LEGO original storytelling I have ever seen. I am not exaggerating when I say that. If you think of some of the best original LEGO stories, I think the gold standard really is Bionicle. Anyone who's bothered to actually take the time to get into the Bionicle story knows how rich the lore is, how deep the characters are, and how mature it was for a LEGO theme for its time. Ninjago is another perennial example of a phenomenal LEGO theme with an incredible story behind it. And sure, Ninjago has its ups and downs. You know, some seasons are better than others, some seasons are a lot worse than others. You know, it's a little mixed when you look at the whole thing, but overall, I would say the good absolutely outweighs the bad in Ninjago. And Ninjago is an example of LEGO doing an original IP right, by devoting a lot of time and effort into telling the story, into treating it seriously, and to serious world building with Ninjago. So that's another great example. They have done a ton of other shows. They've done Nexo Knights, Legends of Chima, Lego Elves got a Netflix series, which was actually really well animated by Studio Mir, the studio that did Legend of Korra. So that's a completely separate video, and stay tuned because I will be doing a series on Lego Elves similar to this one. But they also did Lego Hidden Side. They're doing Lego Dreams right now. Even Lego Friends has a show. Almost every original homegrown Lego theme has some sort of a show. And I kid you not, certain episodes and certain seasons of Lego Monkie Kid clears all of them. Everything I just mentioned, maybe not Bionicle, but it's up there. It's pretty close. It's kind of hard to compare because Bionicle never really got a show. We don't talk about the G2 reboot. So in terms of the modern minifigure-based Lego themes, Monkie Kid is providing some of the best storytelling, the best animation, the best action, the best characterization, the best voice acting. The main character is Jack Decina, who voiced Sokka in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Just the best everything that LEGO has put out. So why hasn't Monkie Kid reached the popularity and reached the heights of Ninjago? Well, I think a lot of that is due to the reasons I just explained in the first part of the video, which is to do with the distribution, with how LEGO doesn't really market Monkie Kid at all in the US or Europe. I do not know how to watch the show. Like, I'm Duckbricks. I don't know, when the show is airing and how to watch it. I follow people on Twitter who post Google Drive links to the episodes, and that is how I've watched Lego Monkie Kid. And it's not for a lack of trying. After the first couple of seasons, Lego just stopped putting the episodes on Amazon. They're not on Netflix or not on a streaming platform. As far as I can tell, they are on a site called Happy Kids, which you can make an account for and then watch on Happy Kids. At least that was what the last season was on. I don't really know how this season is airing. I have been told completely different pieces of information around, and I'm pretty sure that Happy Kids is, I don't even know if that's is that European? I don't even know if it's for the US market. I don't know how the American or European market is supposed to watch the show. And I don't think LEGO knows either. And I'm the kind of person who if I really like a LEGO theme and if it's LEGO, I want to support original LEGO themes. I will get a Netflix subscription. I mean, I had Netflix already, but I will watch everything the legal way. I will watch them the way they're supposed to be watched. I want to give LEGO the watch views to show that people are watching their shows. I even watched all of LEGO Dreams on Netflix, and it wasn't that good if you have seen my video on it, just to prove to LEGO that we want viewership on original LEGO themes. I cannot figure out how to watch Monkie Kid in a legal and easy manner. All of the ways to watch it seem incredibly complicated, and there's a ton of loopholes to go through, and Happy Kids is not a website I really enjoy using. It's just not very well built. I cannot fathom why LEGO has not just put all the episodes on Netflix or a streamer, or just thrown them on YouTube if you're not gonna make it easy to access. Put them on YouTube or put them back on Amazon. Maybe the contract expired. I don't know. But regardless, they certainly don't make it easy to watch the show. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that, without any marketing and without seeing the sets and shelves, it's hard for kids around here to get excited about Monkie Kid. And that's all the thoughts that were kind of swirling around in my mind about why I wanted to make a video on the Monkie Kid TV show. So I was kind of going back through my history, and I found it quite surprising that I cover the Monkie Kid sets a lot, but I've never actually done a video on the show, and that was a bit strange to me, because I love the show. I watch every episode the second they come out. I am such a diehard fan of the show. They always come out in Chinese first. I will watch them in Chinese. I don't speak a lick of Chinese. I should, Probably, but I only speak English and French. I don't speak Chinese at all. So I will watch them and not understand what the characters are saying. Eventually, somebody in the community will do subtitles, like poorly translated subtitles. I will then watch it again to get a sense of what they're saying, and then finally, when the English version inevitably releases somewhere on some Google Drive, probably usually like 4 to 6 months after the Chinese version, I will then go and watch it for real and have the actual viewing experience that it's meant to have for the English language. So I'm such a diehard fan, I will watch all of that. But I realized I've never put a video out on the show because, frankly, the show was so good, I almost had not much to say about it, in that every aspect of the show was just so enjoyable to me that I had trouble coming up with a video topic. With Ninjago, it's very easy to sometimes put out like, oh, season 7, well, that was just absolutely garbage, and I have so many issues with that. And especially with the writing of the later seasons of the 10-minute Ninjago episodes, I had a lot of thoughts on how I wasn't super happy with how this crystallized wrapped up. I'm really loving Dragon's Rising, and that's probably why I haven't put out a video on season 2 of Dragon's Rising yet, despite recording half of it and realizing I didn't have much to say other than I really liked it. Because if I like something, I don't really typically spend a ton of time just talking about it on a video because I've got other stuff to showcase and other things to review. But I wanted to make an exception here for Monkie Kid because Monkie Kid is now in its 5th season, and the show has just been getting better and better and better and better. Let me explain. There's a couple things I need to caveat here first. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, LEGO decided to change the animation studio behind Monkie Kid. Seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 were animated with Flying Bark Productions. Flying Bark is a pretty legendary animation studio. They've put out stuff like the Sonic animated show, I think it's called Sonic Prime. They've put out this incredible Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show. They do a lot of really good work. And their work for LEGO Monkie Kid is of an animation style unlike anything I have ever seen from any other LEGO show. The characters are minifigures, but it's all sort of 2D animated. The movement is incredibly fluid, the fight scenes are visceral and hard-hitting, and you can see the impact lines. It's like watching a LEGO anime to some extent. Even better than a lot of animes that I've seen. Like, I've seen a lot of episodes of Attack on Titan and Death Note, and I mean, I don't watch that much anime, but I've seen all like the quintessential ones. Monkie Kid might have better animation than any of the ones I've seen, because I don't know what magic they're cooking up at Flying Bark, but it is so expressive. The movements are so fluid, I could just gush and gush all day about the animation. Unfortunately though, for season 5, the latest season coming out this year, at the time this video comes out, it will probably already be out. I'm gonna try to release this video around when season 5 starts airing, but do keep in mind, I haven't seen season 5 yet. The Chinese version at the time of recording this isn't out. The English version definitely isn't out, and so this is just going to release around when they're gonna start actually airing the English episodes. So I kind of wanted to get this out at that time, but they changed animation studios to WildBrain. WildBrain is the animation studio behind Ninjago, and they've done some pretty incredible work for Ninjago, especially just getting better and better and better as the seasons progress. We've gotten massive one-take fight scenes for Ninjago that showcase the characters and their elemental effects to great display. We've gotten some beautiful locations and lighting and texturing on their models. But here's the thing. WildBrain is a 3D animation studio. Ninjago is 3D animated. Everything is in a completely different style to Monkie Kid. As far as I could tell, and I didn't go through everything, but looking back through WildBrain's filmography, they haven't really done a 2D show like Monkie Kid before. And so unfortunately, the early clips that we've seen from Monkie Kid Season 5 are a little rough, and I don't want to say anything negative about the animators who I'm sure are trying their best out of a pretty crazy situation they've been thrown into, but I genuinely feel bad for the animators at WildBrain. Basically, they were shown this incredible work by Flying Bark by LEGO, who said, hey, just do this, just recreate it. I know you've never done anything like it, but please just try to do that again. And I think they're doing the best they can, but the animation quality of Season 5's trailers are noticeably much worse than the animation that came before, so it is what it is. Thankfully, obviously, the writing and the voice acting hasn't changed, so I expect the similar level of quality when it comes to storytelling. It's just going to be unfortunate seeing this massive downgrade in animation. But we're not talking about Season 5 now because it's not even out yet. I want to talk about seasons 1 to 4 of LEGO Monkie Kid. And I'm going to be honest, this show proved me wrong. When Monkie Kid came out in 2020, for season 1, I thought it was just okay. I could see something special behind it, like there was the promise of a really exciting show, but Monkie Kid in 2020 made a few mistakes in the way that it was telling its story that honestly made me kind of write it off as just another one of LEGO's shows. You know, it's a show, it's never going to be up to the quality of Ninjago, is what I said at the time, and the reason for that is that Monkie Kid kicks off with a 45-minute special, which introduces you to the world and the characters. However, this 45-minute special served as the pilot to making a full show. If LEGO wasn't happy with this special, or they felt like it was just okay, we would never have gotten the rest of LEGO Monkie Kid as a show. But because of that, they had to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending in 45 minutes, showcasing every single LEGO set, featuring a solid conclusion to the villain getting defeated in some way at the end of the episode, all in 45 minutes. That is really hard. Now granted, that is something that LEGO Ninjago pulled off to a really remarkable degree, but the reason why it worked so well in LEGO Ninjago is for a couple of things. For one, Ninjago had a pretty big dragon focus for the first year, so you could just throw all the dragons together in one scene and boom, 4 sets out of the way. The skeleton army, on the other hand, was just a ton of skeleton vehicles. So again, any scene with the skeletons, you can just do, okay, that's like 3 or 4 sets, motorcycle, truck, chomping tank, done. You got all the sets out of the way. You have a dark fortress, well, that's where your finale is going to be at. You have a monastery where they train, but Ninjago did its best because it focused on one singular character. It focused on Kai and mapping his journey as he meets the other characters for the first time, learns about this world, is kind of an outsider in, and eventually tries to train and become a ninja to defeat the villain. And in the end, the villain, Lord Garmadon, isn't even defeated. He actually kind of wins in the end. Everything goes according to his plan and he escapes, and the ninja are left wondering where he might pop up next. And that was a really solid 45-minute introduction to the world of Ninjago that made you fall in love with the characters and meet the characters as the main character, Kai, was meeting them. Monkie Kid doesn't really do that, and that is still, to this day, my biggest gripe with the show. Monkie Kid kind of throws you in media res, which basically means that you start the show and it is implied that all the characters already know each other, all of these relationships have been previously established, and you're just kind of thrown into the world. How it starts is actually pretty solid. You see a flashback to years ago where the Monkey King is fighting the Demon Bull King, and their legendary battle is stretching across the realm and you're getting treated to some absolutely phenomenal animation. I remember watching this, I was sitting on my couch, pulling it up, saying, I guess I'll check out this Monkey Kid thing, and going, oh my god, this animation is insane. This is unlike anything I've seen with LEGO before. It honestly, at that time, took me a little bit of getting used to. I was so used to Ninjago with everything moving, obviously fast-paced for the action scenes, but everything's more grounded, it's more realistic, they're all 3D models in a 3D environment, everything feels tangible and real. With Monkie Kid, it was a lot more stylized, actions were amplified, a single punch could send the entire planet rocking. It's that sort of crazy action that was a different sort of medium. It almost felt, again, anime-inspired as opposed to traditional 3D cartoon animation, and it did take me a bit to get used to. But I was watching this initial introduction and I was like, okay, awesome. Monkey King defeats the Demon Bull King and uses his legendary staff to seal DBK underneath a mountain. And he has to leave his staff there because if he takes it again, DBK is going to escape. So the staff is staying there and MK vanishes. Monkey King is gone. He has defeated the final threat and the world is at peace. And we flash forward to the modern day, where a gigantic megapolis has been built atop this mountain. And this is when we're introduced to our main character. Here we're kind of just thrown into the action. We're introduced to our character who is simply named Monkie Kid. It is implied later on in the show that Monkie Kid has a name, but it's either unpronounceable, or people don't want to use it, or he doesn't himself want to use it. I'm not gonna dead name him. So you know what? Monkie Kid is his name. That's the name he's chosen. I'm cool with it. It's interesting that the protagonist technically doesn't really have like a name, so to speak, but MK is as good a name as any, and that's what all his friends call him, so you know what? I'll take MK. It took a little getting used to, I will say. Like, having the character not have a name, so to speak, was a little weird, but you get used to it and you just start thinking of him as MK. The other characters thankfully do have names though, although those names are very clearly identifying who they are. MK is a delivery boy working for Pigsy, an anthropomorphic pig man who serves noodles and delivers them all around town, and MK delivers these noodles for Pigsy. Pigsy, as we later see in the series, is kind of an adoptive father to MK. It's later shown that he kind of just found MK, who turned up on his doorstep. He didn't really know where he came from, and he just kind of took him in, taught him how to cook, and now he's working under Pigsy, and he can be a little harsh or a little angry at times, and gets super angry when Monkie Kid doesn't deliver the food right or does something wrong, but at the end of the day, he's got a solid heart, and he's looking out for MK. So Pigsy's a really charming character. And along the way, we also get a chance to be introduced to the other members of the cast, and they actually come in a little later. So I do like how the initial focus was on MK, but he's going through the city, and not 5 minutes in, he just kind of stumbles upon Monkey King's staff. It's just kind of sitting there in a construction quarry, and it's implied that the staff is kind of calling to him, like almost like he's a chosen one who is meant to wield the staff. But he takes the staff, and almost immediately he notices that these two villainous characters have appeared, and they are these descendants or the son of the Demon Bull King. So the Demon Bull King has this whole family of his own. We have the Lady Iron Fan, who is his wife, and together they have a son. His name is Red Sun. That's like his name. We just call him Red Sun, you know? Just take it. That's his name. It's the world of Monkey Kid where people have names like MK. You know, this is Red Sun, and that's who he is. Red Sun and the Lady Iron Fan are there to free the Demon Bull King from his imprisonment, but they need somebody to be able to lift the staff out. So Monkey Kid is watching as they send their Demon Bull clones, who are these mechanical bull warriors, to lift up the staff with their gigantic claw hands until eventually this piece of technology that Red Sun has developed is able to lift it up. But then the unexpected happens. Monkey Kid seizes the staff instead, and through feats of accidents and basically clumsiness on his end, he accidentally manages to actually wield it like a weapon, and eventually realizes that he is being chased by this army of demon bulls and this maniacal Red Sun, and he's like, I'm out of here, I'm gonna flee. This whole time a different animal is watching him, and that animal is revealed to be the Monkey King, who was shapeshifted into a little bird to kind of witness all these events and start him on this journey. So eventually, MK is racing through the city, he's being chased, and out of nowhere comes May. This was the part that was a bit confusing to me on first watch. It was not clear to me whether Monkey Kid knew May, and later on it was clear they actually had grown up together and knew each other for a while and were childhood friends, and they were close friends into where they are now. But when May is introduced, she's wearing a helmet, and Monkey Kid seems almost surprised, like he doesn't know who she is, and then she takes the helmet off, she kind of saves him, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's May. And I didn't know what that remark meant. Like, did it mean that he didn't know that May was this mysterious dragon horse warrior? Or did he know and he was like, oh my gosh, it's you, thank you for saving me with the powers I knew you had? Anyways, it was a pretty abrupt character introduction, but they act like they've known each other for a long time, so May is helping him fight off Red Sun, and she's racing along on her motorcycle, and this is actually an analog to one of the Monkey King's original companions in the legend. The White Horse Dragon was an original companion of Monkey King, and basically in the story it was kind of part horse, part dragon, and it accompanied him along his journeys, but here they've turned it into May, and May is canonically a descendant of the original White Horse Dragon. So she has a long line of dragons that kind of descend down, and it's not super clear. Like, I guess these dragons can also turn into people, but May cannot turn into a dragon. She can kind of summon an energy dragon when she attacks. She can't turn into a dragon though, not at least like a living, breathing reptile as far as I can tell, but she's a descendant of the dragons, and she's a good friend of Monkey Kid's, and this is starting to build his team. Eventually, Monkey Kid comes back to the shop with the staff in hand and is like, oh my goodness, I just went through this crazy adventure, and this is where we meet the next character, Mr. Tang. They call him Mr. Tang, although I'm not clear on Mr. Tang's age. It eventually was revealed to me that Mr. Tang is actually kind of also like a father figure to MK. He has a strange and funny relationship with Pigsy, where he's always trying to eat his noodles for free and continuously frequents his noodle shop, but Sometimes he like leaves him bad reviews, so Pigsy will be forced to give him like more free noodles. It's kind of a funny dynamic they've got going on. They're almost kind of like an old couple, but he sees Mr. Tang, and Mr. Tang freaks out about the staff, and he explains the legend of the Monkey King. And this is where we get our first backstory into who the Monkey King is. Mr. Tang is the monk Tang Sanzong, who was the original wise monk who accompanied Monkey King on his adventures, but he's a descendant of that monk, and now he's just Mr. Tang. Mr. Tang is kind of like the wise mentor of the group, although I actually really like how they flip the trope on its head. I feel like we've gotten enough like classic wise mentors like who are keeping secrets and who know everything and are super powerful, like Sensei Wu and Mr. Oz from Dreams and Lavertus from Chima. Mr. Tang is kind of lame, and I really like that. He's the mentor character, but half of the advice he gives is kind of self-centered and more focused on himself and making sure that he can do well. He is also just a complete coward, and he doesn't really even fight. He only does fight whenever forced to, and a lot of his character arc over the series is overcoming his cowardice and actually stepping into becoming the serene monk he was meant to be. He is pretty hot-headed. He's a very flawed character. He gets into massive arguments with a lot of the other characters, and a lot of them just don't really take him that seriously. Like, he'll try to explain something serious to the characters, and they just kind of brush it off, and they just think it's Mr. Tang going off on some other story again. And I think that's a really fun way to have your, like, exposition dump character, because I never see Mr. Tang as the exposition character. I see Mr. Oz from Dreams as, oh, that's the exposition machine. Sensei Wu, to an extent, is just the exposition man. He just tells people the backstory and then sits back as they fight. Mr. Tang is the one telling the legends, but it's kind of in a humorous way, and he is so lame in that nobody takes him seriously that he's actually a much more interesting character because of it. And it made me want to see where they were going with this character, because he starts off in one position and eventually we know he's going to grow into this wise monk. But how is this like bumbling fool of a man going to grow into this monk? Well, you got to watch the series to find out, and this is still an ongoing character arc. Eventually, as they're fleeing with the staff, they are trying to reach the Flower Fruit Mountain, which is the legendary home of the Monkey King, to basically return the staff to him and say, look, you know what? We don't want any part of this. Demon Bull King has escaped. You need to take your staff and fight him, so please help us. So they're going on a quest, and on their way to go to the Flower Fruit Mountain, we meet the final member of the team, Sandy. Here's the thing about Sandy. Sandy doesn't really do anything. Thankfully, Sandy is the only character in Monkey Kid who doesn't really do anything. As opposed to shows like Lego Dreams, where every character just does nothing and I cannot say anything about them, the only character I can kind of say that for is Sandy. And Sandy, by himself, as the Monkey Kid character who does nothing, still does way more and has way more character development than like any Lego Dreams character or any Nexo Knights character. So it's really showing that this show is just a step above a lot of the others. Sandy is a big fig at first. When we meet him in Lego form, he's actually a whole big fig. They've since made him into a minifigure to include him in more sets, but he is kind of like the muscle of the group, and Sandy is based off of a fearsome warrior who once traveled with the Monkey King in the Journey to the West legend, and it is actually implied that Sandy is that original warrior. Whereas all of these other characters are descendants of those warriors, Sandy just like is that guy. Maybe he's like one layer removed, like he might be a descendant. I don't really know. But they imply that he was at least once a very powerful warrior. But due to trauma and PTSD in his past, he has chosen to live a pacifist life. And I think that's a pretty interesting decision to take the character. It's this warrior who has rejected fighting. He is so powerful and so muscle-bound and could defeat a lot of their foes, but he has a very strict code where he doesn't fight. And he only breaks this code in very, very dire moments in the series. Like, Sandy is kind of like the Chekhov Sandy that they keep, where it's like, he's just gonna be there, he'll help them out, he'll maybe do some defense, but he's not gonna be on the offense unless some real terrible stuff is going down. And you know that stuff just got serious when Sandy is like, you know what, I said I'd never do this again, but I'm gonna fight. And I feel like that is a pretty common anime trope, and Sandy honestly never really leaves that trope. I don't really think he has a sense of character development or progression. Even over the 4 seasons, they literally make fourth wall breaking jokes about how Sandy just does nothing. Like, there are times when the characters are like, hey, Sandy, you haven't said something in a while. Why don't you read this out loud? And he reads like a scroll out loud and then says nothing for the next like 2 episodes. Honestly, that was probably one of the funniest jokes in the entire series. I was like dying at that joke because I was honestly complaining that he wasn't doing much. So at least when you have a character that doesn't really do much and is just kind of there, they know it, like they make fun of it, they acknowledge it, and I feel like that is what sets Monkie Kid apart from a lot of the other shows. It has this sense of playfulness to it. It has a sense of kind of fourth wall breaking and referential humor that never detracts from the story. Like, it never feels like, oh, I'm just watching like a Deadpool or a She-Hulk, but they sprinkle in enough like fourth wall breaking humor that it gives you a chuckle once in a while. Like, yeah, Sandy hasn't said something in a while, and for one of the characters to be like, hey, just read this scroll out loud, you haven't said something in a while, it's just very funny how they just have characters say that and then you move on. You know, they have humor like that peppered into the show. So that's one thing I like, but those are the main characters. And if you watched my video on LEGO Dreams, you might notice that I actually have had quite a lot to say about each character, and we're just on episode 1. Like, I haven't talked about their character arcs. This is the introduction to the characters. And this really shows just how strong of a foundation that Monkie Kid laid for the rest of the cast. It basically starts them all off on a point where they're pretty flawed, and maybe arguably the one with the least flaws is May. Like, she kind of appears on the scene and is super cool and super good at fighting, but as the story progresses, you really see that May has her own stuff to deal with, and she has to deal with expectations from her family of a long line of dragons. She has to practice letting go of things that she really held dear and trying to move on past loss. And there's an entire season dedicated to May's character arc when she realizes that this Samadhi fire is like burning inside of her, and she is someone who might need to make a big sacrifice, but she's not willing to do that yet in her point of life. So these are deep characters. Like, they've got a lot of layers and stuff going on, and the fact that the most shallow character is the character who was once a warrior who was forsaken fighting because he's traumatized from battles and people that he's killed is one of the most compelling characters out there. And I think that's why Monkie Kid is such a strong premise for a show that can just keep on going with this cast of characters. Anyways, we meet Sandy. He loads them up in his big cargo boat, which, by the way, is an amazing LEGO set. It's one of the coolest LEGO sets ever. Would highly recommend it. And they travel on onwards to the Flower Fruit Mountain. But on the way, they are intercepted by the Lady Iron Fan, who uses her power over the wind and storms to steal Monkey King's staff from MK and take it back to the Demon Bull King, who meanwhile has been absorbing rare items into his specialized techno chest plate, where the rarer the item absorbed, the more powerful he gets. There's a funny gag where they go to like a limited edition shoe drop and they're trying to get like these, basically like these Nikes that are like only 500 made, and Demon Bull King just walks in and is like, he just takes the shoe, throws it in his chest, and the final shot is just Demon Bull King in Red Sun wearing shoes from the store as people are cowering. It's just funny visual gags like that that make me love Monkie Kid, and this is just in episode 1, but again, they lose the staff, and so Monkie Kid is at an all-time low. He is blasted backwards over to the mountain. He's by himself, and the rest of his friends, Pigsy, May, Mr. Tang, and Sandy are all forced to retreat back to the boat, despite Pigsy really trying to save MK. Eventually, MK wakes up, and he comes face to face with the legendary Monkey King himself. Monkey King Sun Wukong is probably either my favorite or second favorite character in the show. Actually, scratch that. No, he is the favorite. Like, he is arguably the best character in the show. The English voice actor is Sean Schemmel, who is the English voice actor for Goku from Dragon Ball Z, which, if you didn't know, is also a retelling of Journey to the West. So it's kind of funny how he basically just plays that character in LEGO Monkey King as well. But Monkey King is such an interesting character because I feel like there were a lot of ways they could have taken this wise and powerful warrior. They could have said, well, maybe he's aloof. Maybe he's going to be only a character that we see pop up in the story very rarely to give advice to the heroes and then to disappear, never to be seen again. Monkey King is nothing like that. Monkey King is kind of like, I don't know the best way to describe him. I would say he's like a chill dad. Like, he has put all this fighting behind him. Like, he still will come in and fight, but he's kind of goofy. He cracks a lot of jokes. He's kind of lazy too. He doesn't really want to fight, but that's not really his true character. It is actually revealed in later episodes of the show that a lot of the character of Monkey King that we see is him putting on this goofy exterior to basically befriend Monkey Kid and to make him feel more comfortable and to make him want to accept the responsibility of taking on the Monkey King. If Monkey King just took back his staff and fought all the fights for them, Monkey Kid would not have to exist. Monkey King is trying to train a protege, and to do that, he kind of has to take on this almost aloof attitude, where Monkey Kid is saying, oh my god, the city's gonna be destroyed, and he just says, so what? Not my problem. What are you gonna do about it? And it's this carefree attitude that really persists throughout the story and makes him one of the funniest and goofiest characters, because almost every single line from Monkey King is pure gold. He is both the comic relief, but also a very serious warrior when he has to be. But my favorite parts of the show are when Monkey King actually gets serious, and you can see him drop this facade that clearly is just him pretending to be joking, and sometimes even he's just joking as a way to laugh through the pain of all of the past misdeeds and the past anger that he has with him, and he's trying to move on and be more lighthearted. But there are some scenes where I think one of my favorite scenes is that Monkey Kid figures out later on in the season how to telepathically contact Sun Wukong, Monkey King. And he contacts him, and Sun Wukong is like, hey dude, I'm chilling, I'm on vacation. Why are you bothering me? I'm just lounging back here. Like, come on, you can handle it yourself. By the way, you might need to look out, like there's a threat coming in, but just like call me if you're really in trouble, but don't, because I'm on vacation, so just like don't bother. And he severs the connection, and then he turns around and his face just becomes dead serious, and we see that he is actually interrogating someone for information about the villain that Monkey Kid is facing. And the reason why he does this is because if Monkey King shows that he is worried or that he is scared, Monkey Kid is just gonna lose all his confidence. If Sun Wukong, this legendary figure, is afraid of the villain they're facing and is kind of terrified of what they're going to face next, it's just going to be a complete loss of morale for the entire team. So he pretends that he's just fine, he's chilling, it's not a big deal, it's just a regular day, and the moment that someone's not watching him, he turns it off immediately, and you can hear the change in the voice acting. It is just honestly a really impressive voice acting job, where he just says, now where were we? You need to tell me the information that I came to get. And it is just such a cool dichotomy, where obviously it is a dichotomy that requires such a talented voice actor who can play the goofy side, who can play the side of Monkey King, who's there to crack jokes, who's there to have fun, but then to flip on a dime and play that incredibly serious side, and in certain scenes, a very emotional side, an angry side, a desperate side to him. He is a truly flawed character, and he is defined by his mistakes. Many of his mistakes come back to haunt him, and it's not like he was, maybe he was trying to do the right thing and he messed up. There are many times where he is just in the wrong. Like in the past, he did something really messed up and really bad to someone he really cared about, and now that is coming back to bite him now, and he has to kind of deal with it and show that he's changed and matured. And having the mentor be at an almost similar character arc to the main protagonist, but just later on in that journey, is such an interesting dichotomy to play between them. Anyways, the special ends with Monkey King basically saying, hey, you have to be the one to go and beat the Demon Bull King. You gotta be the one to take the staff back. I'm gonna be watching and I can give you some tips, but this is up to you. You are worthy to wield my staff, so you have to take on this responsibility. And the really nice thing about this is that throughout this first season, it's very clear that if Monkey King wanted to, he could end the fight right there. Like, the fight would be over, he could just step in and just end the threat of the Demon Bull King. But he doesn't, because he wants Monkey Kid to practice fighting back and to be able to learn the skills for himself. And eventually, at the end of these 22 minutes of the second half of the 45-minute special, Monkey Kid goes back, he builds together a jet, and he crash lands in the city, fights Demon Bull King by forming a gigantic mech, which is kind of like his ultimate power, where he can summon this mech from thin air, and beats Demon Bull King, sending him banished, and takes back the staff. And that's it. Like, that's the end of the story. That was a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I definitely feel like that was probably the worst thing they could have done to start off the Monkie Kid story, because we have such a strong cast, we have these really interesting backstories established, but everything is at a frenetic and breakneck pace. And Monkie Kid is always the kind of show that is already moving at a very fast pace. Even for a normal episode, it is much more faster paced than something like Ninjago. But this was just on another level, because this series, this 45-minute special, had to introduce Monkie Kid, May, Mr. Tang, Pigsy, Sandy, Monkey King as the 6 main characters, introduce the 3 villains, Demon Bull King, Lady Iron Fan, and Red Sun. So that's 9 characters you have to introduce. You have to introduce the world, you have to introduce every single LEGO set from year 1. Like, literally all the Monkie Kid sets, save for like a couple, but basically all the Wave 1 sets had to be factored in here. And it's not like Ninjago, where they're releasing 4 dragons at once. One of them's a mech, one of them's a boat, one of them's a jet, one of them is a Demon Bull King truck that turns into a motorcycle. The other one is a giant Demon Bull King. There's just so much they had to cover in terms of the sets in 45 minutes, and then they had to have the villain be satisfyingly defeated, such that if this was the only piece of story media to come out for year 1, if LEGO was like, you know what, we decided not to produce this as a full-on show and order it to series, this could be a satisfying conclusion. And I do not envy the writers for doing this, but I definitely do also feel that I kind of wish they took a few more chances and realized the gold they had on their hands and said, let's not conclude the story here. Let's pull a Ninjago and maybe have them defeat a secondary villain, but the main villain gets away, and it's not even that they defeat the main villain. They don't even fight him. Like, he just says he's gonna fight them later, and we focus and slow things down a little bit, and maybe even introduce some more of the characters and their backstories in future episodes. I think if they took that step to lay down the early foundation of Monkie Kid, it would have been a much more solid show for Season 1. Season 1 is the weakest season of the show, but let's go through it briefly right now. So here's how Season 1 goes. Essentially, almost every episode, save for like one really, really good one that introduced a future character, kind of goes something like this. Red Sun and the Demon Bull King are up to something evil. They're sending their bull clones to achieve some objective, or they're terrorizing some people, and MK has to stop them. Monkey King tells him, I don't want to fight this one, you go for it, but let me know if you need any tips, and you can actually learn some actual power sets that I have in each single episode. And so each episode is focused on Monkey Kid learning how to master one of the power sets of Monkey King, and then use that to defeat the Demon Bull King, usually defeat Red Sun, who is a pretty compelling character, and Red Sun actually later becomes one of the main characters, so this is just kind of set up, but they defeat him, and that's it. And it's super, super basic. It's kind of like a Monster of the Week or a Slice of Life style show where you can just skip some episodes and it doesn't really matter. There are some episodes you do need to see, but other episodes, like there's an episode about the Great Wall Race, and they're trying to race to get one of the peaches of immortality, and Demon Bull King wants a peach, so he sends Red Sun to compete, and Lady Iron Fan competes, and all the other villains we've seen so far compete, and Monkey Kid competes, and May is in there, and the whole episode is this race. At the end of it, they realized that the prize was a replica of the Peach of Immortality, and it wasn't the actual thing. And basically nothing is accomplished. Like, it was kind of cool, like the animation was awesome, but it clearly was a reason, like, the episode exists to market the race car set, and it very obviously is just supposed to be like a fun little bit of action that doesn't really progress the story that much. And honestly, a lot of Season 1 episodes are like this. The other thing you need to know about these season episodes of Monkie Kid is that they are 11 minutes long. Monkie Kid came out right around when Ninjago was doing their 11-minute episodes, so they decided to just go ahead and do the same thing. Whereas Ninjago as a show kind of faltered when it came to the 11-minute episodes because we were used to the show slowing down and giving us heart-to-heart character moments and just spending swaths of time with characters sitting down and talking to each other, which they couldn't really do anymore for the 11-minute episodes. Monkie Kid starting off with 11-minute episodes meant that they could actually define the pace on their own. And it's actually one of the rare instances where I really do feel like the 11-minute format actually does work quite well for Monkie Kid. Granted, in later seasons, they eventually just started doing multi-parters, so they would have part 1 and part 2 and even part 3 or part 4 of a 4-part finale of 11 minutes each, but obviously it's telling one continuous story. And as the show got more serialized, they started doing this more, to the point when I feel like Monkie Kid could probably go for a change-up. Like, they could put out 22-minute episodes. Heck, they could put out 45-minute episodes right now, and I think the show would be like just as good, if not better. But the way they started off, the 11-minute episodes really helped for season 1 because season 1 is pretty frenetic and it's pretty disconnected. One episode, they're dealing with bad weather, where the bulls hijack the weather machines and make a storm. Another episode, Monkie Kid is learning how to duplicate himself, but he realizes that all of these duplicates, if left unchecked, can kind of go crazy, and he's also harming himself in the process. Every time he makes a duplicate of himself, he has to pull out a tuft of his hair, which transforms into a copy of himself, and he realizes that he can't overwork himself, and doing all these things at once is actually harmful for him. It's a pretty simple lesson for kids, and it's probably a lesson I need to learn, but it's, again, just a one-off episode. Another episode, Calabash, focuses on the introduction of 2 more secondary villains, the Gold and Silver Demons, or as they call themselves, the Gold and Silver Demons. They have a very strong accent, but they have a Cockney accent, they're quite funny, but they're kind of just side characters. Like, they're just random other demons that Monkey King has fought in the past, and they kind of pop up, and they try to trap MK in this like memory type of fake scenario type of machine. It doesn't really work, and he escapes and makes it out. There are, however, a couple of episodes in season 1 that were a cut above the rest, and they were really dedicated towards building up to something even greater. So, Monkie Kid as a show, for the first 3 seasons, is all building up towards one final boss, the Lady Bone Demon. The Lady Bone Demon is easily one of the most compelling LEGO villains since Makuta from Bionicle. We'll get more into Lady Bone Demon when we get into season 3, but basically, the entire objective of the Demon Bull King throughout most of season 1 is to unlock this mysterious chest and this mysterious tomb. He finds it buried deep within the city, and he is dying to know what's inside. It's almost whispering to him, telling him to open it up, and he can't seem to control himself. All his thoughts are consumed by wanting to open this tomb. So each episode, he's fighting the bulls, but then in the background, DBK is just trying to open up this tomb. Eventually, they figure out a way to open it. The mysterious mayor of the city, who has this like eerie blue glow in his eyes and was later revealed in season 3 to be a servant of the Lady Bone Demon, gives this key that can unlock anything to Monkie Kid. And eventually Monkie Kid loses it to Red Sun, who gives it to his dad, and they open up the crypt and they find nothing. They find just a pile of bones, but you can barely see a spirit slither out into the darkness, just setting up something for later. And the sound design that they did for the Lady Bone Demon is super cool. It's got these eerie whispers, and if sometimes you can make out actual words, like it's saying open me or learn my secrets or use my power, but other times it's just these eerie whispers that are kind of just echoing throughout the chamber. And it genuinely is kind of creepy sound design. Like, whoever's working on the sound effects for this show did a really good job. So there's an episode focused on that, and there's also an episode focused on a brief conflict with the Spider Queen. The Spider Queen is the antagonist for the second year of LEGO Monkie Kid in season 2, but here she basically is just introduced. She seduces Pigsy, and I mean that in the most literal sense, and has him go over to her shop, which is clearly extremely dubious and full of just like broken down and rotting wares. But you know, Pigsy's got his eye on something else. Listen, like, she's telling him he can look at the ingredients in the back, but Pigsy wants to look at something else in the back. I'll tell you that. They make that very clear. Mr. Tang goes with him, but is very dubious of the Spider Queen and doesn't seem to understand what's going on. It's implied that Mr. Tang is ace, or he just doesn't really see things that way, so he's just kind of oblivious. He's very funny. So he's just kind of witnessing all this happen. But Pigsy eventually gets trapped and ensnared by the Spider Queen, who wraps him up in a cobweb and prepares to eat him. And so Sandy, May, and MK have to go down into the sewers to fight off the Spider Queen. And then the best episode of season 1 is simply titled Macaque. Macaque is one of the most compelling characters in the entire show. And I think I've said that about like every single character so far, but it's because it's true. He's really, really interesting. Macaque is marketed in these sets as the evil macaque. I honestly consider that to be slander. Macaque is, yes, sometimes some could describe him as evil, some could say he's misguided, but at the end of the day, Macaque is somebody who had something really horrible and wrong done to him by Monkey King, and was treated so poorly by his former friend that he's grown bitter, and he's grown angry against the Monkey King. And I feel like that is, again, another like traditional fiction trope, but the way they play out Macaque's character arc is fascinating. He goes from being like a sometimes ally, usually enemy of the main characters, to a full-on primary antagonist in season 3, where he is forced by the Lady Bone Demon to basically be her horseman of destruction and her warrior, to eventually breaking free, teaming up with them to fight back, and then kind of becoming a member of the hero gang in season 4 and 5 and onwards. His journey and his emotional arc is fascinating, and Macaque's introduction in season 1 was easily the coolest thing that the show did. So, Monkey Kid is growing a little bit tired of his training with Monkey King. He feels that he is not really being pushed past his limit, and he is wanting to learn more. And Monkey King keeps saying, well, you're not ready, let's just focus on this basic stuff first, and let's have you do like some chores first, and you can learn a valuable lesson from doing chores. And it's implied that Monkey King just kind of wants him to be like an errand boy doing chores, so that is kind of on Monkey King. Like, that's kind of funny. Like he literally just has him doing menial tasks like cleaning up his shrine and temple. But Monkey Kid wants more, and he feels like he wants a better teacher. And eventually he encounters Macaque, or Macaque finds him. And Macaque teaches him to tap into this darker side of himself. And he unlocks so much more powers. And Monkey King is initially kind of impressed. He says, wow, you're becoming super powerful. I guess my teaching's paying off. And he's like, you're not seeing other teachers, are you? And Monkey Kid just tells him, no, I'm only seeing you. I'm not seeing anyone else. And just continues training, but under both of them. And Macaque continuously tries to push him more and more beyond his limits. And he even stages fake battles. He meets Macaque because Macaque is fighting this gigantic shadow monkey, which has descended upon the city, and only Macaque can fight it off. And that's how Monkey Kid realizes he wants him as a mentor. It's later revealed that Macaque has actually created the fake shadow demon as just an illusion for himself to fight. But as Monkey Kid taps into his evil self and his dark powers more and more, Macaque gains control over the staff. Whereas until the final moment, we see him reach his peak level of powers, and Macaque seizes the Monkey King's staff, takes it for himself, and then imprisons Monkey Kid inside a mountain. He literally throws him into a mountain so hard that the mountain crumbles around him, and MK is stuck. All he can do is call for help, and that's when Sun Wukong, Monkey King, appears. And this is the first time we get to see Wukong be deadly serious. He is not playing around, he is not joking. He is here to whoop Macaque and to put him back in his place. And thus begins one of the craziest battles in the series, where they're shape-shifting during the battle. They're creating copies of themselves fighting each other. The impact of their punches and their hits are literally destroying the mountains. And at one point, Macaque says this really interesting line. He says, the old you would have leveled this entire countryside, this entire mountain, just to kill me. What changed? Why are you holding back? And he realizes that Monkey King has actually changed, and he's learned to grow and care for this young kid who's now kind of like his apprentice and his ward, and he purposefully is doing less damage as to not harm Monkey Kid, who's kind of caught in the crossfire. And this is the point where Macaque doesn't necessarily give up, but he kind of gives in. He loses the fight, he lets him have the staff back, and he starts to think that maybe his old friend and his old enemy really did change from the selfish person he once was. And this storyline only gets deeper and deeper, where we realize that in the past, Monkey King was quite a selfish individual, and he really only cared about himself and his own glory. And Macaque always was in the shadow of the great Monkey King. And no matter what he did, Monkey King would always either take credit for his deeds, or puff himself up, or be boastful and kind of really be putting himself out there. And Macaque just kind of felt mistreated as his friend, until eventually at one point, Macaque comes to free him from some imprisonment that a villain has imprisoned Monkey King. He's stuck, he's at his lowest point, and Macaque feels bad for his former friend. And he comes he can't free him. It's outside of his power, but he brings him food. He's trying to help him out. And Monkey King just lashes out and he says, "This is all your fault. It's all because of you. You're the reason why I'm here," which is not true at all. And Macaque just realizes that the person he considered to be his friend really just cares about himself. And at the end of the day, when things get serious, Monkey King, Sun Wukong, never really saw him as a friend, or at least in that moment, he didn't think he did. He just saw him as just a tool that he could use, or someone beneath him, and never really respected him. And that's really where that wedge is formed. And that is such an interesting character to dive into. And I just love how much depth that Macaque received as a character going into the rest of the show. Anyways, we meet Macaque, he leaves, and then finally, finale of this season, after Monkey King and Monkey Kid are off fighting with Macaque, the Demon Bull King has taken over the city, and something very strange has happened, where some mysterious skeletal essence has crept into his body, and it's almost like he's possessed. All he cares about now is destruction. And it's to the point where his wife, the Lady Iron Fan, and his son, Red Sun, are kind of scared of him. And the turning point is when he turns on his son. He starts becoming paranoid and says, "Maybe you're a traitor, maybe you're plotting to overthrow me," and growing more powerful. And he starts to physically attack his own son, who is terrified of his father. That's when the wife steps in, blocks his attack, teleports both of them away, and they leave Demon Bull King to his own devices. And this is the point where they basically go to the gang and say, "Hey, something has taken control of him. We need to remove this furnace from his chest because some other entity has seized control of his mind and he's not acting like himself." He's kind of like a villain, but he's not like that kind of villain, you know? He's not the kind of villain that actually seriously tries to kill people. He just kind of likes to take over some stuff. He's not supposed to be doing this. So they all team up. The people that they've been battling against all season, Red Sun and Lady Iron Fan, team up to help Monkey Kid and the team beat Demon Bull King, and eventually they shatter the furnace. He is reduced back to his normal self. It's almost like he awakens from a fog, and then you see the spirit of the Lady Bone Demon slip out of his mouth and go into the mouth of an unsuspecting child, possessing her and using her as the vessel for the Lady Bone Demon in Season 2 and beyond. So Season 1 was admittedly a bit of a mixed bag. I really like the Macaque episode. The character is incredibly done, and sadly the voice actor actually did pass away, but they got an equally talented voice actor to voice him for Season 4 and beyond, and it sounds just the same, and he's just as good. But Macaque, one of the most compelling characters, so that's one episode I really liked. And I guess the intro to the Spider Queen was cool, but it wasn't that exciting. It was just a new villain they were introduced to. And otherwise, I wasn't really super excited about watching the show week to week. Each episode was so episodic in that they were encountering one specific thing for the episode, and the plot wasn't really progressing, that I almost kind of wrote it off. But I think that I almost misjudged Monkey Kid Season 1, because looking back at it, I am actually really glad that they actually took the time to develop Monkey Kid as a character before we started facing some real serious threats. Demon Bull King, until the final episode when the Lady Bone Demon possesses him, isn't really that serious of a threat. Especially Red Sun, who's kind of on the same level as Monkey Kid. They're kind of both figuring it out as they're going along, and most of Season 1 is focused on him learning life lessons and learning power sets that he can use to whip out against the villains in future seasons. And in retrospect, I'm really glad they took the time to do that. My only worry is that people might watch Season 1 and think that this is the entire show, that it's never going to get any deeper than this, and you can maybe infer or make headcanons about where the characters might be going, but it's really just 11 minutes of action, and that's it week after week. And I almost kind of thought that, and it wasn't really until Season 2, maybe really until partway through Season 2, where I started to realize that this was getting a lot more serious, and then throughout all of Season 3, which is probably the best season they've done. Season 4 is also really good. Oh man. 3 and 4 are Season 1 is here, Season 2 is here, 3 and 4 are all the way up here. They're just so good. But partway through Season 2, I was like, okay, this is actually maybe building towards something that might be a really compelling story. And here's how it works. Season 2 starts off with a 45-minute special. And that is the kind of Year of the Spider type of thing. The Spider Queen decides to seize some power for herself, emboldened by this mysterious girl that she's talking to as an advisor. This little girl is, of course, the Lady Bone Demon in disguise. She's possessing a human vessel. But Spider-Queen doesn't know that. She just thinks that this is just some underling, maybe some lesser demon or some lesser opponent that is there to aid her in her true quest. But there's always something kind of spooky about this girl, where even in the early parts of the special, the Spider-Queen is about to be defeated. Monkey King comes over, he's like, oh, this is super easy. Spider-Queen, she's like a low-tier villain. Easy, done, we can beat her. Monkey King takes a swing at the Spider-Queen, and then this mysterious white-haired girl teleports in front of him, stops his blow, like in mid-blow, and sends him flying backwards. And you can see his entire demeanor shift, where once again, Monkey King is shifting from someone who wasn't taking it super seriously, he was kind of goofy, he was like, oh, it's just the Spider-Queen again, to being like, who is this? Who is this individual who can stop me? And thus begins the mystery of Season 2, which is who is this mysterious advisor for the Spider-Queen, who clearly is more powerful than Spider-Queen, the main villain, but is just using her as a means to an end. And that was a really cool way to delve into the plotline. I thought that was a really interesting way to have the true main villain in almost every episode, but never really showing her true power, always being hidden behind. The entirety of Season 2 is focused on this battle against the Spider-Queen, but it's a little bit more in-depth than Season 1 was. Whereas Season 1 was more episodic and focused on small skirmishes between them and the Iron Bulls, Season 2 is a lot more serialized in its storytelling. It paints a journey and a quest from point A to point B of them trying to collect artifacts and figure out ways to get a edge over the Spider-Queen, who is lurking beneath the sewers, ready for a takeover of the city. And one of my favorite episodes of all of Season 2 is the true introduction to the Lady Bone Demon, because we hadn't even heard that name before. We had literally, the audience was also, like, this was a mystery to the audience of who this character was. Monkey Kid ventures into the Spider-Queen's lair, and he's about to defeat her. The Spider-Queen is done, but then all of a sudden he is racked with these terrible visions, and the animation style changes to this very, very interesting, like, pencil, line-drawn, sketched-in animation, which shows the incredibly creepy Lady Bone Demon kind of teleporting around him, saying things to him, like putting him down and saying that he has no idea what he's dealing with, and Sun Wukong is deceiving him and he shouldn't trust the Monkey King. And you can see him kind of descend into despair, and it's really where our main character, is at his lowest point. And the animation is incredible. You can see him being grabbed by the neck, literally being pulled into the ground, until the Spider-Queen walks in and the Lady Bone Demon has to quickly stop because she's hiding her identity from the Spider-Queen. So Monkey Kid, terrifies, just absolutely gets out of there. He flees. Spider-Queen's laughing. She's thinking he's fleeing because of her, but all the while, she is unaware, the Spider-Queen is unaware that this was all the work of this mysterious other entity that she's working with. And then that made the appearance of this girl a lot more interesting every time she appeared on screen. Now, throughout the season, eventually the way that it ends is pretty crazy and shocking, because the season ends with the deaths of a lot of the characters. Lady Bone Demon eventually decides that Spider-Queen has fulfilled his purpose. You know, she's done exactly what she wanted her to do. She's fulfilled the role that Lady Bone Demon kind of manipulated her into playing, and she doesn't need her anymore. And so she kills all of the Spider-Queen's minions and top lieutenants. These were kind of like the main general bad people that we were fighting all season. She kills them, boom, just like that. She absorbs them into herself. They die. You can see their, like, souls getting sucked in, and they are dead. Like, they are 100% dead. Like, that was a murder on screen. And then she just straight up kills the Spider-Queen. And it's just like that. The entire antagonistic force of the season is fully defeated, and it wasn't even by the heroes. It was by the real main villain, who has been lurking in the shadows this whole time. And then the plot completely takes a shift, where Monkey Kid sees this gigantic Lady Bone Demon in the center of the city. And at first it starts small, but it grows and grows and grows. And he has no idea what this is. And he is throwing every single one of his powers at it. He is doing his duplicatination, where he can pull out strands of his hair, he duplicates himself, he attacks, nothing. He does his transformations, he transforms into different animals, tries to attack it. The spell only gets stronger. and every time he strikes it, he loses the ability over one of his magical powers. Eventually, he makes his gigantic, super powerful Monkey Kid mech. This is the mech that defeated the Iron Bull Demon. This is the mech that was really instrumental in a lot of fights, and he hits the Lady Bone Demon, and literally the mech he makes is the size of its hands. It picks it up, rips it apart, takes the staff from him, and Monkey Kid is left 100% powerless. In fact, he spends the entirety of Season 3 with 0 powers whatsoever. All the powers, all the skills that he had spent months and years learning in years 1 and 2 are just gone like that. And that's when Monkey King, who has been on a quest of his own the entire season to uncover the identity of the Lady Bone Demon and figure out how to defeat her, reappears on the scene, whisks MK away, and they just barely make it out. The entire city, the entire population is frozen solid by the Lady Bone Demon, who begins fulfilling her ultimate plan. And we later on learn what this ultimate plan is. But this is a pretty downer ending, and this is when Monkey Kid really got my attention. It's very bold for a LEGO theme to end an entire year's worth of storytelling with not just like, there's one thing to have like the villain win, but this was another level. Like, the main villain got killed by an even badder main villain, and that main villain has now completely wrecked the whole team. She has taken the powers of the main protagonist. They are without the staff. They do not have anything with them. All they have are themselves, and all they can do is run away. They literally cannot do anything but flee. Everything is hopeless, and the season just ends. And that is it. Like, that is the end of Season 2. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is getting really crazy. I cannot wait to see where this goes. And then comes Season 3, which is maybe one of the best seasons of LEGO television ever made. I would put Season 3 and Season 4 of LEGO Monkey Kid among the top 5 best seasons of any LEGO show. I mean, thinking back to Ninjago, what were the best seasons of Ninjago? Oh, Sons of Garmadon, I'm completely forgetting. Sons of Garmadon and Hunted are the 2 best Ninjago seasons. Equal. Not even better. They're equal. Like, that is how good these seasons of Monkey Kid are. So here is what Lady Bone Demon's whole deal is. Essentially, Lady Bone Demon descended down onto the mortal plane to help the mortals, to help humans, and she wants to help them overcome famine, disease, war, and lead society into peace. But over her years, she transforms into multiple characters, and she spends centuries trying to right human civilization into a place where she feels that it is perfect and conflict is gone. But more and more she realizes that humans at their nature are self-centered, they're greedy, they backstab each other, they are vicious, they're vile, they will do whatever it takes to succeed. And she realizes over these millennia, over these thousands and thousands of years, she comes to this conclusion that humanity is beyond hope. And the only way to make the perfect world is to freeze everything in place. There's going to be no fighting, no nothing, no advancement, but no conflict, and everything is just perfectly still and serene, and only then will the world be at peace. And this is especially impactful because we open up with a flashback to the Lady Bone Demon, who was acting as an advisor to an emperor of, I guess this was China back in the day. And she goes and says, "You have allowed famine, disease, and warfare to plague your land. Your people are dying, and all you care about are riches and wealth and gluttony and feeding yourself, and you are neglecting your people." And this is actually obviously tied back into Chinese mythology. This was a very serious thing that they were dealing with. I mean, if you look at the history of the Chinese government, which is a completely separate video and probably not the topic for a YouTube channel focused on LEGO. But if you really do your research on the history of there, it really makes sense why these legends took place and a real lack of faith in the leadership of the country. But Lady Bone Demon basically decries this emperor and this ruler and says that, "I am disgusted with what you've done, and you no longer deserve to live. Like, you have everything that any mortal man would want in the world. You still want more. Your people are suffering because of it, and you're just gonna die. Like, I do not deem you worthy to live anymore. And she manages to convince his top advisor, his top chief of war, to side with her. And it's a very chilling scene where the emperor is stumbling down the stairs, he is kneeling down, he is swearing he'll give her riches, he'll give her more power, he'll give her all the wealth in the land. And she just scoffs and says that even to his death, he doesn't understand. He doesn't get what his problem is. And the scene ends with, like, his minister of war just whipping out his sword and says, "I'll take care of him with pleasure, my lady." And it's implied that he just, like, kills him right there. And that's a pretty, like, dark, that's a pretty serious scene. And I really like the scene because I feel like it depicts the motives and the reason for the Lady Bone Demon's existence in a very serious manner, and maybe arguably not a relatable manner. Like, I also don't like it when government officials only want to accrue wealth and don't think about the populace. I don't think that that means that the entire world should be frozen and everything should stand still, right? Like, there's different levels, you know? Thanos might be right about overpopulation, but that doesn't mean he should kill half the people. But this was like a Thanos level villain where, like, yes, they are in the wrong, they are maniacal. Their ideology has taken them to such an extreme point, but you can see where they started, and you can see how this character became so disillusioned with the world and wants to change it. And so the Lady Bone Demon, over the years, decides that humanity doesn't really deserve to continue to evolve and grow and wants to keep everything still. Monkey King once defeats her, locks her up, but now, thanks to the Demon Bull King and his meddling, she is free and able to wreak havoc across the world and spread her evil across the realm. And so now, all that we have left are Monkey Kid, May, Mr. Tang, Pigsy, Sandy, Monkey King, No Staff, and this is where we discover the legend of the Samadhi Fire. So what is the Samadhi Fire? The Samadhi Fire is this legendary, world-consuming fire that has the power to defeat the Lady Bone Demon, and only the Samadhi Fire can defeat her. She is so powerful, especially with command of Monkey King's staff, that nothing else can beat her. But here's the thing. The Samadhi Fire was split up centuries ago into individual fire rings. Now Monkey King, when he's telling the legend, claims there are 3 Samadhi rings of fire. But in a certain episode, Monkey King is essentially given induced amnesia. He is sent back to a younger version of himself, mentally speaking, which was also a really cool way of seeing the character, because that character was very different when he was young, and he slips, and right as he is about to get all of his memories back, and the Monkey King that we know and love was about to return, they fix his memory, he says something about, "Oh, what are you talking about? There are 4 rings of Samadhi Fire, not 3. And Pigsy hears this and immediately starts to kind of have the seeds of doubt planted in their minds. Is Monkey King really telling the truth? Why would he hide that there are 3 instead of 4? Like, why does that even matter? And it's revealed that Monkey King actually was deceiving them the entire time and hiding an incredibly important secret from the team because he knew it meant that a certain member of the team would have to make a sacrifice that either he didn't want them to make or he did want them to make, but just didn't want to tell them beforehand so they could decide not to. And that's a pretty devious move. Like, having one of your team members have to commit a sacrifice but not telling them so they will do it on the spot is not really a heroic thing to do. It's almost like a villainous thing to do. And that's why I love the character of Monkey King, because he's not always a hero. In many ways, he's an anti-hero. If the situation demands it, he will lie. He will keep the truth from his team. He will set people up to take the fall if it means the betterment of the world. And that's kind of just the person that he is. And over the course of season 3, he also has to kind of go on this journey with himself where he realizes, is this the person I want to be? Am I the kind of person that I'm proud of being? And he kind of learns lessons himself. Even someone as wise and as powerful as Monkey King has to learn these lessons. And so, as they're traveling, they all have their own character arcs, but what is revealed that the mystery behind the missing Samadhi Ring of Fire is that back in the day, back when everybody was friends, the Demon Bull King was once really good allies and friends with Monkey King, and they were also allies alongside the original Dragon of the East, May's descendant. And what happened is that the Demon Bull King had a son, Red Sun, but Red Sun was consumed by this vicious power. This all-consuming power. the Samadhi fire, and it was uncontrollable. Even as a toddler, he was proving to be a threat to the entire world, where if left unchecked, his pure power in fire could essentially destroy the entire universe. And so what they do is they perform this really powerful spell to try to siphon the fire from the red sun and bind it in these rings of power, these 3 Samadhi rings, or these 4 Samadhi rings. But at a crucial moment, Monkey King kind of falters. He isn't really sure if he's strong enough, and he is just getting overwhelmed by power. And his companion, the Great Dragon of the East, has to fly in, save him, and also save the Demon Bull King, and absorbs one of the rings into himself. And this power of the fire is passed down generation to generation, where it now resides in May. Monkey King knows this. He doesn't tell May though, because he doesn't want to freak her out, and he wants to prepare her to have to sacrifice herself to use her as the final ring. But eventually he grows attached to the gang and realizes that he can't really do it. So the secret is out, and they realize that one of the members of their team is crucial to using the Samadhi fire to defeat the Lady Bone Demon. And unless she makes this big sacrifice, there is no shot they defeat her. So then, that's a big question the team has to grapple with in the finale. But there is a lot more going on in season 3, because obviously I went into detail of Red Sun's character arc, of May's arc, of Monkey King's arc. There are so many other characters that have so much to do. I am genuinely shocked they managed to fit all of this in to just a few 11-minute episodes. Season 3 is really the macaque season. And despite the main villain being Lady Bone Demon, she's so powerful that she doesn't really appear as a fighting force until the final episodes. Instead, she forces Macaque to do her evil bidding, and she basically has this crystal that binds around him and physically punishes him every time he does something that isn't what she commands. And she forces Macaque to turn against the gang and have to fight with them to take the Samadhi Rings of Fire for themselves. And this whole time, Macaque is being forced against his will to do this, but it also is in his nature to be evil, to fight the Monkey King. So he's very conflicted. He is almost regretful of a lot of the actions he does, and he's more and more regretful as the series goes on. And over the course of the series, Macaque has to learn to actually stand up to the Lady Bone Demon and try to revolt against her, no matter how painful it might be to him and no matter how bad the consequences. So that is one entirely different plot thread that's being focused on, and each and every one of the characters is going through their own arc. Everyone has something to do. Except Sandy. Sandy, I can't name what he does in this season. To be honest, I don't really know what he does. He's kind of there. Yeah, no, he's just kind of there. You know, it's Sandy. And this is the season where they do explicitly make fun of him literally just being there to just kind of be there because they just had another character. But otherwise, everyone else is firing on all cylinders. And we learn a lot more about the relationship between Monkey King and Macaque and how that fell apart and how he's trying to do the right thing, but outside forces are making him do the wrong thing. And it's just really compelling. It's a compelling piece of media to see all of these characters learn and grow and become better versions of themselves. And finally, this all culminates in a big showdown with the Lady Bone Demon, where the Monkey King goes to fight her one-on-one, which is a big mistake. Still, throughout all of this, he still hasn't learned his lesson. He says, I am just going to go fight her myself. I don't want any of you to get into harm's way, so don't even come. I am leaving, and he just goes. May, on the other hand, realizes she has this power inside of her, and she's overwhelmed with emotion. She can't believe that Monkey King wouldn't tell her about the secret. She can't believe that now she is the key to solely defeating the Lady Bone Demon, and she flies off on her own and leaves the group. And eventually, she lands in the forest where she's greeted by Red Sun, who says, hey, look, if you want to learn how to control fire, well, I'm your guy. So Red Sun is training May in this final episodes of the arc. It's kind of like a May training arc where she learns to control her fire powers and develops a deep relationship and bond with Red Sun. Meanwhile, Monkey King is fighting Lady Bone Demon on his own, one-on-one. The Minister of War from thousands of years ago, who now is the mayor of the city, he kind of is implied to either be a descendant or the same guy who's been given immortality, is fighting Monkey King in what is maybe one of the coolest fight scenes ever, and they're really duking it out in the skies above. And that brings us to the other character introduced to season 3, and I think this character is going to be one of the primary antagonists or protagonists of season 5, it seems like they're going in a pretty interesting direction with him, but that's Neza. Neza is a guardian of the celestial realm, and his job is to protect the Samadhi Rings of Fire, and in particular the map that leads to them. The first scene of season 3 showcases Monkey King fighting against Neza to retrieve the map to the 3 rings. And Neza is purely an antagonist here. He is fighting against the heroes, not because he wants Lady Bone Demon to win, but because he is worried about what the power of the Samadhi Fire would mean to be in the hands of someone like Sun Wukong, someone like the Monkey King, who has repeatedly shown he cannot be trusted, he is self-centered, and he looks after himself, and he might even be a little power hungry. And Neza doesn't trust him. And so he serves as an antagonist throughout much of the fight, where he is trying to stop them from getting the rings. He is like a secondary antagonistic force. But finally, when it comes up to the final moments of right before the big 4-episode finale, Neza realizes that this power of the Lady Bone Demon is way too much for all of them to handle. And against his better judgment, he allows them to seize the Samadhi Rings of Fire and use them to fight her. And basically, he then allies himself with the team. It's an uneasy alliance. They're still a little distrustful of him, but they kind of have no choice. They have to work together to fight back against the Bone Demon. So this finale is insane, where you have Monkey King fighting and losing to the Lady Bone Demon. He takes out her top lieutenant, but is wounded in the process. Lady Bone Demon uses a spell to suck her spirit out of her lieutenant and force it into the Monkey King, making the Monkey King under her control, controlling an evil version of the Monkey King, which I still am so upset we never got as a minifigure. That would have been the coolest minifigure ever, and we never got it, which is very unfortunate. But Monkey King is now evil. He's got like his new color scheme and everything, and the only defense now is Monkey Kid versus Monkey King, Macaque versus Lady Bone Demon, and May versus everyone else on Lady Bone Demon's side, all the spirits and ghouls and her crystalline spikes. And over the course of these episodes, May learns to control her powers, and she is tutored by Red Sun, and finally goes ahead and defeats the big evil Lady Bone Demon in one big fiery blast. She lets the fire loose and has enough control over it that she doesn't burn up the entire world in the process. Monkey Kid, in the end, manages to turn Monkey King back to the good side. They all work together. Macaque, who is now allied with them against evil. Macaque, Monkey King, and Monkey Kid, the trio work together. They beat the Lady Bone Demon, and then she leaves us with the final words of the season. She says, "I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to make the perfect world, and you think that the perfect world is a world without me in it." And Monkey Kid has a really good response, and he basically says that, "No, I'm not trying to make the perfect world. This world isn't perfect. It is flawed, and this world will always be flawed. It is an impossible task to try to make the world perfect. There will always be war, there will always be conflict, there will always be bad things in life, but as long as you try to do the best thing that you can do in your power to make a difference in the world, that's really all you can do. That's the way that you can make the world perfect for yourself, by relying on your friends and your family and yourself to do what you can to make the world just a little bit better. It doesn't need to be perfect, but as long as you're contributing positively to the world, you're making a difference." And the Lady Bone Demon leaves him with, "The pursuit of peace will only leave you with one thing, pain," and she fades away into non-existence. That is probably one of the hardest villain lines ever uttered by a Lego villain. This is all tied back to where the origins of the legend come from. It's deep in Buddhist religion and kind of concepts of the world in that sense. But she basically says that the pursuit of peace, the pursuit of a perfect world, and the pursuit of the end to conflict is only going to lead to pain, because no matter how hard you try to stop it, eventually you're gonna end up like me and be disillusioned that mankind will keep on making mistakes. And she fades away, and that's it. And Monkey Kid is left kind of unsettled by this. He doesn't really know what to think of it, and it's something that really sticks with him as a line that echoes in his head. They literally play it back as flashbacks throughout season 4. It's not just a throwaway final line. This is something that psychologically affects how our main character sees the world, and he starts to do things differently because of it, and look at himself in a different way because of this line, which is probably the best impact a major villain can have on the hero, is make them continuously question themselves and question their worldview and question their morality every time they leap into action. But anyways, that is the end of Monkie Kid Season 3, and it seems pretty conclusive. This also was the end of the 3rd year of LEGO Monkie Kid, which is typically the year that LEGO themes are designed to run. And it's very clear to me that that was originally the plan. LEGO designs, if you don't know, all of their big bang action themes to last at least 3 years. Nexo Knights had a 3-year plan and did so poorly that they canceled the show and left it on a cliffhanger. Chima had a 3-year plan and did just good enough to hit those 3 years and call it good at the end of that 3-season arc. Ninjago initially was supposed to end after this 3-year and kind of 2.5 season final battle, where they literally had the 3rd year sets being called the final battle until fan demand forced LEGO to bring it back all of a sudden for the next year. And LEGO Monkie Kid had a similar thing, where basically it did so well in Asia especially that they were like, yeah, we can keep telling more stories. Let's tell the next chapter in LEGO Monkie Kid. And that brings us to the masterpiece that is Season 4. Season 4 brings back an old enemy from Monkey King's past, and this is one of the most interesting plot twists that they do throughout the season. The entirety of the first 3/4 of Season 4 treats this main villain as the hero, and he's actually one of the members fighting along the good guys. And there's a twist right at the end, 3/4 of the way through the season, that actually reveals him to have been behind the whole thing, but he actually is trying to do the right thing, just in the wrong way. And he then becomes the main villain. The intro changes to show them facing off against him instead of these Shadow Warriors, and the rest of the season is them trying to defeat him. Unfortunately, this great twist was kind of ruined by the LEGO sets, where the LEGO sets depict him as the main villain. Like, this is the bad guy of the season. So going into the season, I was like, oh, there's the bad guy. I wonder what he's up to. And I was kind of weird, like it was kind of strange. Like I was like, oh, this guy's not too bad. Like he's helping them out. He really wants them to succeed. And I was waiting for the other end of the shoe to flip. And so I feel like that reveal was not quite as impactful for me as it was for maybe somebody who like ignored the LEGO sets and just watched it completely blind, because I would have been pretty surprised if I just ignored all the LEGO sets and was just watching it as a piece of media. But here is how the plot goes for Season 4. Season 4 revolves around the Azure Lion and his Brotherhood. The Brotherhood includes the Golden-Winged Peng, an eagle-like character, and the Yellow Tusk Elephant, a large hulking elephant. This trio of characters, alongside the Iron Bull Demon and the Monkey King and Macaque, used to form a council of these kind of animalistic characters who were trying to work underneath the celestial ruler, basically the god of this world, and create order in the world. And long story short, this is actually a really in-depth backstory, so much so that the entirety of Season 4 is set in the past. It's kind of like a time travel-esque plot, and a lot of it is focused on flashbacks, which I love. Give me more flashbacks, tell me the lore. But essentially how this all went down is that Monkey King is kind of inciting some trouble. He is saying, look, come on, what is the celestial ruler really doing? Is he really governing this realm well? Is he really the true ruler? Is he really the true god that we should be following? Maybe it should be us. Maybe there should be a council of us up there ruling the world instead of him, because he's not stepping down to stop any issues that are happening on the mortal plane. We're down here dealing with war, with famine, with pestilence. His soldiers, us, are dealing with this, but he's just sitting back on his chair doing nothing, and we're barely even getting any direction from him. What if we were to overthrow him and actually stage a revolt? And at first, the characters are a little bit wary of this. They're really not sure if they should follow Monkey King, and eventually, though, he gets them really worked up. And this also is really interesting because it shows the relationship, the early relationship between Monkey King and Macaque. Macaque is somebody who just really genuinely wants to support his friend, and while he thinks it's a really bad idea and doesn't really want to go along with it, Monkey King is so dead set on staging this revolt in the celestial realm that Macaque goes along with it, and eventually so do all of the other animals. What they decide is that, look, one of us should be the main ruler. And they all vote and they decide on the Azure Lion. The Azure Lion is the most noble of all of them. He is stern but fair, and his sense of justice is incredibly strong. The Azure Lion is somebody who, above all else, wants to do the right thing for the mortal plane. Monkey King rallies all of his animal friends to go and stage a revolt in the heavens. They fight Neza, and they fight these warriors of the heavens. And it's actually really cool because you can see this is literally where the Demon Bull King met his future wife, the Lady Iron Fan. But eventually, Monkey King and his allies are completely defeated. They fight their way through Neza, they fight their way through these celestial warriors, but they come face to face with the celestial god, the celestial ruler, and he just completely obliterates them. He puts his sword down and he says, "I am stopping this revolt right now." And from the characters' point of views, the events that follow play out extremely differently. And I find this really interesting because, much like a lot of other really good shows, they have this one event framed from different perspectives of the characters. And from Azure Lion and the Elephant and the Eagle's perspective, Monkey King betrays them. And he says, "Look, we're gonna lose this fight, but I'm going to look out for myself and my friends. So I am going to pledge allegiance to the celestial god, to the celestial ruler, and allow him to place this band around my head, which signifies my allegiance to him. And with this circlet band, I am now one of his most fearsome warriors, and I will beat you back." And that is technically what happens. Monkey King swears fealty to the Lord Celestial Ruler and then uses his powers and all of his allies, his pig ally, the Mr. Tang monk ally, like all of the characters that we know today, like the previous ancestor versions of them, and they all beat back the Azure Lion, who is kind of shocked at this betrayal. He feels like this was literally your idea, and now just because we're losing, you're gonna backstab me just to gain the favor of the god and ruler who you know we can't defeat. Instead of accepting that we've all been defeated and taking the punishment equally, you are now betraying me and casting me out. And he casts out the Brotherhood, and they try to form a kingdom of their own in the mortal realm, but Monkey King is ruthless. He will stop at nothing to defeat these enemies. So he descends upon their peaceful kingdom and just razes it to the ground. He completely destroys everything and just defeats them. And he actually defeats them so badly that he gets this mysterious ink scroll and captures the Azure Lion, the Yellow Tusk Elephant, and the Golden Wing Peng. He wraps them up in the scroll and traps them in there for all eternity. It's a scroll powered by memories, and we'll get into that later. So that's their point of view. Monkey King, not looking like too nice of a guy in this point of view. And the whole show, we're wondering kind of like what happened, and we only hear Azure Lion's point of view until like 3/4 of the way in, which is why we learn he's a villain. What actually happened is a little bit more nuanced and complex than that. Monkey King did betray the Azure Lion, but he didn't really have a choice. The circlet actually contracts around his head, forcing him to be in incredible pain every time that he disobeys the celestial ruler. It is actually the punishment given to Monkey King for coming up with this revolt in the first place and instigating the idea of a revolt. So basically, Monkey King was kind of forced against his will to do all of this, but from Azure Lion's point of view, his friend just betrayed them and completely just pounded them to the curb and wrapped them up, trapping them forever. Both sides have a pretty good reason as to why they're upset, and one would argue that Monkey King is not really fighting on the side of the good guys, because his whole point was that the Celestial Emperor was not paying attention to the subjects of the mortal world, allowing pain and pestilence and famine and war, and they wanted to do something about it. The Azure Lion wants to build a new civilization from the ashes, and he wants to overthrow the Celestial Emperor, the Jade Emperor is what he's called, and basically take that position for himself because he feels like he can do a better job. it is genuinely a pretty noble cause, and he really believes he is in the right. And he believes so much that he's in the right that he gives the main characters multiple chances to lay down their weapons and either join him or just not get in his way. He goes out of his way to try not to hurt them. In fact, his other compatriots, the Yellow Tusk Elephant and especially the Golden Wing Peng, are a little more villainous. They are really out there to they're happy. They will hurt anyone that comes across them. Azure Lion stops them from harming Monkey Kid and his friends sometimes and says, look, hey, I'm just trying to take over the Jade Emperor's role. Look at all this conflict you guys have been facing. The Jade Emperor has been sitting up there in heaven doing nothing. God is basically just watching down from above. I want to become God because then I will start making a difference. That is his noble intention. But this noble intention is over time sort of twisted into a more malicious and a more self-centered and vengeful intent. And they actually call him on that, where he's taken this noble deed, but in his quest, the Azure Lion has compromised parts of his morals and his ethics and his integrity to achieve his goals. And because of that, he has lost sight of the reason as to why he's doing this. Spoiler alert, at the end of season 4, Azure Lion wins. He kills the Jade Emperor. He takes the Emperor's place, and he becomes the new Jade Emperor. And he is using this immense amount of power to just keep the universe from fracturing. And he realizes that this was not quite as easy of a job as he realized, that this is actually something that requires incredible strength and stamina and willpower just to keep the universe itself from ripping itself apart and the divide between the mortal realm and the celestial realm from opening up. So he's using all his power to do this, and through this time, the amount of power is almost driving him mad, and only one sole thought is driving him. He wants revenge on Monkey King. Revenge for destroying his civilization of the Brotherhood. Revenge for everything the Monkey King did to betray him. And even at this point, the elephant especially, like Yellow Tusk Elephant, is saying, look man, why do you even care about Monkey King? We came here to make a difference in the world. But instead, you're spending all your effort on trying to kill Monkey King. This isn't why we wanted to do this in the first place. And then Azure Lion starts to lash out at his own allies. And that's really where things start getting interesting and falling apart and showing how this once noble character has fallen so far. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's backtrack a little bit. The season begins with MK and Monkey King reminiscing about their adventures, and Monkey King is telling Monkey Kid that he has a lot of regrets about how he handled things. Obviously, he's alluding to how he handled the whole Azure Lion situation, and he feels that he could have done things a lot better if he were to do it again today, but sometimes you just have to learn and live with your regrets. And in this process, Monkey Kid accidentally unlocks the Ink Scroll. The Ink Scroll is a really rare piece of history that is a magical artifact that essentially is bound by the memory written into its pages. It's a bit of a high fantasy concept to explain, and it's honestly kind of complicated, but I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. The way this memory scroll works is that basically the user's memories, whoever is trapped inside of it, they are forced to relive their worst memories. Anybody who enters into the scroll can, with enough magic and power, basically implant themselves into these past memories and live through these memories. However, when you enter into the scroll, you basically, at least for most people if you're trapped, are stuck in the past lives or reincarnations of your previous ancestor. And the very big theme of this season was about the ancestors and about reincarnation, which plays a really big role in, obviously, religion, where the religion this is based on, but also in the story of Monkey Kid, where all of Monkey Kid's companions, Mr. Tang, is kind of a reincarnation of the monk Tan Sang Zan, and Sandy is a reincarnation of the great warrior who was like a brute back in the past, and Pigsy is a reincarnation of the pig warrior. And so over the course of the season, what happens is that first, Monkey King gets sucked into the scroll. And there's a big mystery as to where did the scroll even come from? And it's revealed that some higher power, presumably the villain of season 5, or maybe even season 6, if there is a season 6, kind of planted the scroll in Monkey King's things, and basically they took the scroll from a severely guarded vault in the underworld and planted it with Monkey King to allow it to be opened again, as part of a plot to weaken and destabilize the universe, because they knew that Azure Lion was in the scroll. He would come out and try to actually enact his plan to overthrow the Jade Emperor and probably succeed, which he does, destabilizing the universe in the process. This to me is giving me vibes of when this mysterious, bone voice was influencing the events of season 1, where we had no idea who it was or what their deal was or what their motivation was, but it was clear that they were the real main villain of the season. That's kind of like what they're doing with season 4. It's almost like they're doing season 1 again, but better, where you have this mysterious big bad threat cloaked in the shadows who has pulled strings to allow these events to be set into motion, and everyone is just a pawn of this mysterious player. Even Azure Lion is falling directly into what this player is expecting him to do. But anyways, what happens is Monkey King is sucked into the ink scroll, and Monkey Kid has to flee the waterfall the hideaway area, and he is faced against these shadows of Monkey King's past, and he sees that these shadows are representing these previous characters that, obviously the Yellow Tusk Elephant and the Golden Winged Peng, and even the Iron Bull Demon and Lady Iron Fan, specters of his past enemies who are now conjured up into ink shadows to really demoralize their opponents and to kind of send them back down into the depths of the Shadow Scroll. So Monkey Kid escapes, and eventually he reunites with May, and they try to stop the ink demons from escaping the scroll. And they're fighting, and they're losing, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a sword slash comes in and Azure Lion appears on the scene. Azure Lion is really presenting himself as a true hero. They don't even know that he kind of was imprisoned himself. He presents himself now as a full-on hero, and he stops the ink demons, wraps up the scroll, and says, hey look, something really bad has happened, and you now need to go inside the scroll to free Monkey King to stop this from happening again. All in all, what he's actually doing by this is coming up with a way to trap them inside the scroll as well, so he can enact his own plan without outside interference. But this whole time, it looks like he's their ally, aiding them inside the scroll. So what happens is that he convinces them that he is basically like a brother to Monkey King. And to some extent, he's kind of like Monkey Kid's uncle, you know? He's the Uncle Lion, he's a friendly guy, he's just an old friend of Monkey King's, and he is trying to save his friend. So Monkey Kid is a little gullible, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, that checks out. Like, you seem like a cool guy, you're clearly super powerful, you helped us out. Yeah, let's get sucked into this scroll and try to free Monkey King. And in this process, all of the friends get sucked in as well. Tang, Sandy, Pigsy, they all get sucked in, and they are scattered throughout the scroll, their memories completely gone and themselves reverted back to the bodies of their ancestors, which is super interesting. The only ones that are unscathed are Monkey Kid and May, presumably because of the way that the Azure Lion sucked them in to allow them to still retain who they were inside the scroll. And so they find themselves in ancient China. And they are in the early days, literally living through the Journey to the West storyline and trying to find Monkey King on his quest. And each and every episode is focused on one of the side characters facing who they were in the past and overcoming that person that they once were. And it's really interesting because Pigsy is reincarnated into his past self, which is this really vicious, warmongering pig who will literally cook people alive in a stew. And he is an incredibly cunning warrior, and he's a brute, and he's just really powerful, and they have to convince him to basically look past the monster within himself and see that he has this kind heart and soul underneath, where he eventually reverts back into the Pigsy we know and love. Sandy is back in his warrior phase. He is ready to kill opponents. He is there, he is surrounded by thrones and mountains of skeletons and bones of enemies that he has vanquished. And he is on the hunt for the ultimate enemy. So when Pigsy comes, who is now back to his normal self, to talk him out of it, Sandy spends all of his power just completely beating up Pigsy, wondering why Pigsy won't fight back. And this is Sandy at full power. He is absolutely terrifying. They have made our original characters actually quite scary when you look at them in this form. And Pigsy at one point unleashes the monster within himself and fights back against Sandy, laying a blow on him. And Sandy's like, yes, finally, you've shown yourself the warrior within. But then Pigsy realizes that's not how they should be conducting themselves. They've grown past these monsters, and Sandy is brought back to reality by being reminded of his friend Mo the cat. It's kind of his little pet cat, and Sandy is back to normal. And all of the different storylines play out this way. But the types of enemies the different individuals encounter are really interesting, and every single story is incredibly gripping. Each episode is centered around one of these side characters, making it a very character-focused story. In fact, basically none of the LEGO sets even appear in Season 4. Like, a lot of the sets appear in the first episode as part of a throwaway action sequence, and we never see them again. There are sets that they made and they just simply don't even include in the show, and it's very clear at this point that the show is trying to establish itself as more than just a set commercial. And sometimes LEGO will make a set and they'll be like, we want to focus on the character development. This episode is just going to be about the characters interacting with each other, and that's just non-canon. That's just another random set. And I respect that so much that I don't think even Ninjago has escaped that curse. Sets are sometimes very awkwardly shoehorned into LEGO shows in ways they don't make sense, and Ninjago is guilty of this, but Monkie Kid solves the problem by just simply deciding not to include some of the sets in the show, and I respect that. I'm surprised they are even allowed to do that, but somehow they do. But the Mr. Tang episode, he is brought back into the body and mind of the monk Tang Sanzang, and he has to work to basically allow an old soul, an old ghost that has been left kind of with unfinished business. He needs to convince it to move on to the mortal plane. And the plotline of the episode is actually really almost melancholy and sad. It's a family whose the grandfather has died, and something, they don't know what, but something is keeping the soul and the ghost of this grandfather lingering in the human world. And no matter what they do, the ghost is just kind of living there with him. He's just like an old ghost, and he's not really kind of doing any harm, but his noises and his crying and the care they need to take for him is taking a toll on this family. And this family says that, look, they love their grandfather, they love his presence in their lives, and they loved him when he was alive, but they need him to move on. They need him to realize that he no longer belongs on the mortal plane. He's not happy. He's just crying every night for some reason. And eventually the entire episode, they just sit down and have a conversation with this family. And the grandfather, eventually they realize that he's feeling like he's unseen and that he is just a member of the family that they don't want around. And that is actually ironically what's keeping him around, is that he hasn't reached this closure with his family, that he wants to have this acceptance and love from them so he can move on to the afterlife. And Mr. Tang has to really go on this emotional journey of negotiating and talking down this ghost who each second gets angrier and angrier, and he becomes a more destructive spirit, growing in size and eventually becoming a physical threat, threatening everyone around him as they're trying to kind of send him to the next plane of existence. And eventually they realize that, I'm not going to spoil all the details, but there is a very emotional conclusion to the arc where he has his goodbye with his family, where he realizes that he doesn't need to linger in the mortal realm, and with this closure, he kind of fades away and just becomes nothing and goes to the next stage of life. The next stage of existence is what they call it. And that was a really deep episode. I actually do think back on that episode, and I feel like it has a lot to say about death and about people moving on from this mortal plane and thinking about it not as the end of your life, but about just the next step and what it takes to feel at peace with the life that you've lived. And they tell that story in 11 minutes. it's an 11-minute episode, and I was genuinely shocked at how, like, actual emotionally wrenching it was to witness this family have to say goodbye to someone they once loved but had overstayed their welcome in the mortal plane. So that was awesome. Just a super solid episode. I just never thought a LEGO show would deal with that concept, the concept of grief and loss and moving on. Like, Ninjago does deal with stuff like that, but this was very explicitly like, this soul does not want to leave Earth because has unfinished business. And it was super interesting how LEGO was willing to dive in that deep into a pretty mature concept like that. And I think it's important for kids to take in media like that because kids might not understand what it means for someone to die, for someone to move on. And I think that this episode could genuinely help kids who maybe are mourning the loss of a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or even a parent. It could help kids really move on. So absolute A+ to the Monkie Kid writing team. That was a really powerful episode. Really great, and also helped mature the character of Mr. Tang, who I started off by saying is kind of a funny, like, joke character, and he's just kind of incompetent and kind of lame, but he gets really serious in season 4. He gets a magical staff, which he can use to wield his magic at long last. He gets a crown. He really just grows into his own character, and it's really cool to see a character that was initially kind of just this kind of one-dimensional character really evolve and mature and take on a lot of responsibility this season. And then Mei has a character arc of her own. She has her sword broken and realizes that items don't make her who she is. It's really the power that she has inside of her, which is maybe a little bit more cliche. Like, I think the Ghost Afterlife episode was a lot deeper than Mei, like, realizing that she has power inside of her to, like, make another sword. But, you know, varying levels of depth in terms of the characters. But the antagonist that she faces is fascinating because they go in this beautifully animated segment of a celestial guard up in heaven who falls in love with a mortal woman, and he abandons his life and his post in the celestial realm to be on the mortal plane with her. But sadly, she of course is mortal and fades away, and eventually, no matter his efforts, she dies, and the only way that he can try to figure out how to bring her back is by absorbing souls of his enemies and eventually of innocent people, and devouring souls and siphoning their power so he can become powerful enough to raise somebody from the dead. This guy had like a 5-second backstory, but with 5 seconds, I was bought in. Like, I was locked in. I was like emotionally invested in this character. I found him to be a compelling villain. This guy could be like the main villain of a multi-season arc, and it's not even that. He's like a side villain in one episode that gets defeated at the end of the episode, sort of. It's kind of left ambiguous, and maybe we'll see him again, maybe not. He's not a minifigure. They didn't need to include him in the show, but they just came up with this stupidly compelling reason for a villain to have their motivation and just gave it to like a random side character. And on the one hand, I'm like, wow, I kind of wish that they explored that character more, because that's a fascinating backstory that we got no time on. But on the other hand, I feel like it really shows just how impressive the writing of the characters are, that I am that locked in when it comes to a random, like, mook, like a random dude who's just like the villain of the episode. That's why he's imprisoning Mei and her ancestor. Like, for me to be that invested in his story is really well done. And obviously a lot of that is because of the gorgeous animation that accompanies the visuals surrounding him devouring the souls and losing his love as she like evaporates into a stream of petals. Just beautiful, beautiful animation. Just absolutely stunning work from LEGO, and just doesn't really even feel like a LEGO show at that point. I keep forgetting that I'm watching a LEGO show. But anyways, as they're going alongside this journey, eventually the core point of this season is, who is Monkie Kid at his core? Why does he exist? And I don't mean like his motivation or goal, like literally, as a person, how did he come into being? Like, who is this guy? And that's kind of a question that you don't really question, you know? In seasons 1 to 3, Monkie Kid is just kind of there. His name is Monkie Kid. He, for whatever reason, has been chosen to wield the powers of the Monkey King, and we just kind of accept it. But season 4 subverts that acceptance on its head, where it makes the viewer question, you've been rooting for this guy for 3 seasons, and you have no idea where this guy comes from. In episode 1, you found out he was left on the door of Pigsy's, like, shop. Where did this kid come from? And Season 4 really delves into Monkie Kid having this kind of issue with his own identity and trying to figure out, like, was I created for a purpose? Did somebody make me? Am I not a real person? Who am I really? And he's grappling with this idea of identity. And as Monkie Kid starts to erode his sense of self, the ink scroll defenses start to latch onto him. And he faces off against a shadow ink demon version of himself, who basically is kind of like his dark side and starts to make him question why he's been placed on this earth and what his true purpose is and what his origin is. And throughout this process, he starts to kind of glitch in and out of a feral monkey form, a form that has like a black tail and monkey hair and monkey ears, and a form that he can't control. And this is really hinting at a maybe like potentially dark secret in his past as to why Monkie Kid was created, which I can see from the trailers of season 5, they're really gonna explore in season 5. So as I'm telling you this, they have not told us the answer. This is like a season-long mystery that has not been resolved yet. So I'm very curious to find out like what the answer is about this. Like, where did he come from? Because now I want to know like really badly. But that is it. Like, that is his whole struggle through the season, and eventually he embraces this monkey form, but at a dark cost. He loses control of his powers, and he flees, he leaves. He says, I'm not worthy, I can't protect you as my friends, and I'm just a danger to you. I shouldn't be around you. So he leaves, and he goes and seeks out none other than Macaque. Because you know who has experience dealing with evil monkey powers? Well, the evil monkey himself, Macaque, who now is reformed. And, well, he's doing his best to be on the path of good. And so, for the last few episodes of the season, we get another special that ends the season, and a few episodes leading up to that. Monkie Kid kind of sits it out. He is training with Macaque. He is really just kind of stuck in this sense of trying to figure out who he is, while the rest of his friends have to put up a fight against the Azure Lion and his companions from breaching these celestial gates and becoming the Jade Emperor. Of course, they all lose. Everyone is defeated. Neza loses. Red Sun is sucked into the scroll. Everyone is defeated. And Azure Lion becomes the Jade Emperor. The sky cracks open and splits, but finally he's accomplished his goal. And then we get to the final episodes of season 4, the battle against the Jade Emperor, where it is everybody against literally God of the universe. And the way that this battle plays out is really interesting because you have your forces scrambling to reunite, and Monkie Kid has learned to sort of control his monkey form, but not really. But the way he actually defeats the Azure Lion is engaging him in a one-on-one fight, and Monkie Kid lets loose. He is full-on in his monkey form. Monkie Kid drops like the coldest line he's dropped the entire series. He like teleports over to Azure Lion, and he goes up to him and is like, "Put your hand in the monkey cage, son, and expect to get bit." And he unleashes his monkey form and just absolutely destroys Azure Lion. And you can see the chains that are clashing against each other, chaining the Jade Emperor together, forcing him to bind the universe together, are broken in this fight. And so the Azure Lion is slowly starting to evaporate, but as he is dissipating, Monkey King asks him an important question. How are you here? How are you free from the underworld? And Azure Lion at first is like, what are you talking about? I just made my way back from the scroll and now I'm enacting my destiny. But Monkey King is like, no, you don't have the power. You never did have the power to free yourself from the underworld, to get out of the scroll itself and re-manifest in the physical realm. Who allowed you to do this? Somebody is manipulating you. You are playing right into the plans of some other force. And Azure Lion is at first confused. He has no idea what to say, but his anger overpowers him and he tries to lash out at Monkey King, saying he's lying, he's a betrayer. And with those final words, he realizes that all he wanted to do was make the world a better place, almost kind of like Lady Bone Demon, but just in a very different way. And he fades away from existence. And that is it. The Jade Emperor is dead. There is no emperor in charge. And with that, the universe is in significant danger. It is the weakest the universe has been. Now, Neza tries to do something. He enacts a magical spell to try to bind the universe together in the absence of a Jade Emperor, but the spell is pretty fragile, and it's definitely just a temporary fix. They need to come up with a better way to either restore the old emperor or to come up with a new emperor soon, because otherwise the whole universe will tear itself apart. And it's at this uneasy state that we end season 4, where it's a happy ending, the villains get defeated, even the elephant and the eagle aid in the final fight against the Azure Lion. They kind of turn against him, and his former companions say he's lost his way. So it came all full circle for them, and eventually the Yellow Tusk Elephant and Golden Winged Eagle return to the scroll where they're meant to serve out their sentence as essentially penance for the crimes they've committed. And the season ends, and it ends at a pretty desolate note. I mean, it's a happy ending. It's happier than the ending of season 2, but it's a very uncertain future that they're leading towards and that they're building towards and going into. And that's really where we kickstart season 5, which I haven't seen yet, but now I'm really excited to see what happens next. I think that overall, obviously this video has been talking about why I like Monkie Kid, but also being kind of a summary of the past 4 seasons. I think the thing they do really well is that Monkie Kid has landed on a formula that just works incredibly nicely. You have almost like a 3-season arc of 3 seasons, different villains per season, but you're all building up towards a main threat and a main villain at the final end for the final confrontation. And over the course of this time, you learn more about the history and the lore and the backstory, and every single one of the characters, except Sandy, has character development, and they continue to grow and change and evolve, and I can see them doing this for a long time going into the future. I am, admittedly, a little bit worried about the change in animation studio. I do not know if that means that LEGO is cutting back on the budget for Monkie Kid. Does that mean that maybe sales aren't where they need it to be, and because of that, they can't afford Flying Bark anymore, and they need to hire a cheaper animation studio? It's all speculation. For all I know, maybe WildBrain just has some expert negotiators who signed a killer contract to take over all of LEGO's animated shows, because after all, they are also taking over LEGO Dreams, which was animated by another separate company. So maybe they're just gonna be taking on all the LEGO stuff. But I have to admit that it is a little worrisome seeing the animation change and the amount of sets decrease, which usually shows that the theme is kind of winding down. And that's why I really wanted to put this video out now, because Monkie Kid is a shining golden gem in a vast sea of LEGO original themes. Some good, some mediocre, others not so good. And I feel like I don't see anybody online talking about Monkie Kid. There is a small but active fan base on Twitter that really is super vocal and passionate about the show, and I feel like more Ninjago folks are starting to get more into it, but it's definitely not a behemoth like Ninjago. I see less people talking about Monkie Kid than they do Dreams, and no one's talking about Dreams. And I feel like it would be such a shame to let such a well-animated, well-voice-acted, well-written piece of LEGO media and piece of storytelling just go by the wayside and end because it's not getting enough attention from the rest of the world. I think in Asia, it's doing amazingly, and it seems to have a big fan base in Asia. But in order for Monkie Kid to be a worldwide IP, more people need to start paying it attention here in the States and in Europe and in all the other continents. And I definitely feel like Monkie Kid is easily one of the most underrated LEGO themes and the most underrated shows. And a lot of that is because people don't know how to watch the show. And I wish I had better answers for you. You can watch, like, I think seasons 1 and 2 on Amazon, but those aren't even really the good ones. Like, the really good ones, 3 and 4, I think they're on Happy Kids. You can find them online if you want to. It is not hard to find them, I will say that. And by the way it's shaping up, season 5, aside from the animation, which seems to have taken a dip, is shaping up to be one of the strongest seasons yet, with a really compelling story surrounding Neza and Neza's father, who hasn't appeared in the story yet. So I'm super hyped for that. But overall, that's been my recap and deep dive into LEGO Monkie Kid. I hope you enjoyed this video and it was a bit of an insight into what Monkie Kid is all about, and hopefully this has convinced you to check out Monkie Kid and experience the show yourself. I know this was a pretty long-winded one. I don't script any videos, so I just kind of talk free form, but I really did want to dedicate the time and probably hours that this video is going to be to really convince you to go out and watch LEGO Monkie Kid, and heck, buy the sets too. That's all I have to say for this one, and until then, I'll see you next time. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at LEGO Monkie Kid as a show. It is so cool to see, as a fan of it, how it's grown over the years and started off as something a little bit more procedural and kind of villain of the wiki in its first season and the second season, and then really evolving into something a lot deeper with more interesting lore as the show went on. I hope that you enjoyed checking it out. I definitely would highly recommend it, and it is easily one of the best LEGO shows ever made, in my opinion. That's all for this video. Definitely stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.